everyone, and welcome to Fellows Friday. This is every Friday we're doing this where we introduce one of our fellows that works here at the Civil War Institute and explain what they do and give them a chance to tell you what their interest is. So today we are here with Danielle Jones, class of 2018.
Hello.
And I would just think the way to start would be to ask you about why you got involved, anything about yourself that's obviously important to this decision.
Right. So originally I applied to Gettysburg to be a history major with a Civil War era studies minor, and I ended up actually creating my own major out of that. So I'm majoring in violence and memory and history. So obviously the Civil War is involved in that generic topic, and so it's just something that's always been interesting to me, and just the opportunity to write about the Civil War and to write about the aspects that you don't necessarily think about when you hear the Civil War is something that really intrigued me, and so that's why I wanted to become a fellow, is to have that opportunity to improve my writing skills as well.
With that, has there been any particular post or research that you've done that is your favorite or most interesting to you?
Yeah, so I actually worked at the Smithsonian this summer, and one of the things we came across in doing that, I was working with the opening of the National African American History and Culture Museum, and so that really intrigued me. It was like the role of African Americans in the Civil War, and so one of the articles that I wrote was an article on the 13th Amendment and how, historically speaking, the 13th Amendment has a clause that says that slavery can still be used as a punishment for crime, and how that clause inadvertently led to Jim Crow South and mass incarceration. And so that was a post that was really interesting to me that I really enjoyed doing. And then most recently I did a post on California trying to secede and the legality of that, and so that's always been fun for me because I'm from Texas, and so there's always been this joke of like, oh yeah, Texas can leave anytime it wants, but we can't. We can just become 5 states. So that was a fun post for me to get to debunk the idea that California can actually lead without staging a revolution. So
relating to your African American studies, do you find the information easy to access or no?
It depends on what you're doing. If it's something generic like, okay, we're looking into the Constitution, then it's easy. If there are certain people, it's easier than others, but overall it's not the easiest thing, but once you find things, it's really interesting to get to see that perspective.
Mm-hmm. And on a different note, do you have a particular figure of the Civil War that you like to study, not like military or civilian, anything?
It's not a specific figure, but I really like studying the Confederate female spies. There's just something about them that really is just, they're an intriguing group of people because they're crazy, but in a really good way. So they're just a really enjoying group of people to look at, because they're just so intricate, and you can never tell if they're being serious or if they're just completely making up things as they go, and it's just really interesting to read and try and piece together how much influence did they actually have versus how much influence we think that they have now.
Now, what kind of sources do you use when going about that topic?
Usually I do primary sources. With the Confederate women, it's really interesting with a lot of the spies is they have, a lot of them wrote memoirs, and they had no problems talking about what they did after the war. So there's been this kind of like debate amongst a lot of people over whether or not you can trust what they're saying in the memoirs. So that's been a really interesting thing to try and piece together and figure out, like, okay, so-and-so says, I gave this information to whoever general and, saved the war. And so it just, a lot of times looking at other information, but using the memoirs, because all of them publish memoirs, and they have no problems talking about what they did after the war, which is really interesting.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have a particular park also that catches your interest?
I don't necessarily. I haven't been to a lot of the parks. I remember when my family drove up to move me into Gettysburg, we drove from Texas and we stopped at Lookout Mountain, and it was amazing because we weren't expecting much. We really weren't sure about it. It just happened to be a day that the parks were offering free entrance, or like that specific park was offering free entrance, and it was sundown, and so we went, and it's the top of this massive mountain over, I believe it's the Chattanooga River, and so you just look over and you see the entire city of Chattanooga, and it was just the greatest view ever. And so like that park sticks in my mind, and obviously I have a home in Gettysburg, so I like it here too.
In general, with your research, you've been doing a lot recently, especially with your major as well. How do you suggest going about a new topic that you find?
I would say definitely go for topics that you find interesting, but also be willing to go for topics that are assigned to you. I think a lot of people feel like, oh, well, this is something that they forced me to do. I don't really want to do it. Like, you can always find something interesting out of something that you're assigned. And then as far as like general things, just the way that I usually do it is I'll find like a primary source or just one like book that's really interesting to me and go from there and say like, oh, this is something that I'm really interested in, or I heard someone say this and I don't really believe that it's true, and like going in and doing something that you're interested in, because a lot of times if you do something that you don't really want to research, you don't really have fun with it. So just finding the good in whatever you're researching and having fun with it.
Right. So as you can tell, Danielle's pretty different from a lot of our fellows in that her focus is on a lot of different areas concerning war. So if you have any questions for her, you can just comment it, and she'll likely be able to respond pretty soon. We'd like to thank you for coming on and watching this, listening to us, and we're really appreciative of the fact that you care about the people behind the writing that you read. So we hope you have a great day, and catch us next week on Fellows Friday.